Good morning, everyone, and welcome to yet another edition of RE Views. Our guest today requires very little introduction for those of us in the renewable energy space, but I will introduce him nonetheless. We have the immense pleasure of hosting Mr. Ashish Khanna, President, Renewables at Tata Power. He has been with Tata Power since 2007 and has 3 decades of rich and varied experience across the renewable sector, utility infrastructure, project management, and contracts. Thank you, Mr. Khanna, for taking time out and joining us today.
Pleasure. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Joining Mr. Khanna on the Fireside chat session today is the Managing Director of Bridge to India, Mr. Vinay Rustagi. Very quickly on the format of today's session, it's simple. It will be an interaction with Mr. Khanna, who will walk us through the status of the renewable energy sector in India today, what are the updates from the industry on the latest developments, and Tata Power's growth plans across all the verticals, starting from module manufacturing, agricultural solar, C&I business, green hydrogen perhaps, and storage, and etc. So towards the end of this session, we may have some time to take a few questions from the audience. So if you do have any questions, type them in at the chat box at the bottom right corner of the webinar panel that you see on your screen. Without spending any more time, over to you, Vinay.
Thank you, Sangeeta, and good afternoon, Ashish, and good afternoon, everybody who's joined the session. So delighted to have you, Ashish, and thank you so much for taking the time. The reason we've been very keen to have you is, of course, that Tata Power occupies a very unique position in the renewable energy sector. I think it is the only company which has got presence across the whole value chain, from manufacturing to project development, EPC and O&M, and then presence across the different segments, utility scale, C&I, residential, and off-grid. So I can't think of a better person than you to give us insights, holistic insights into the sector. So, just before I hand it over to you, I think I just want to kind of give some key numbers. Tata Power's project development portfolio is a little more than 6 gigawatts, which places it between 5th or 6th, depending on what parameter you look at in the whole business. EPC portfolio is more than 9 gigawatts, which puts it in number 1 position. In cell and modules business, currently it is number 3. With a capacity of about 500 megawatts per annum, but that, of course, is going to change soon. And then in the C&I, rooftop solar, and the pumps in the off-grid business, we see the company as number 1 on the EPC side, and it has been so for many years now. So, Ashish, given your unique role, do you really see a great value play in occupying all the pieces of the market? What is the portfolio strategy? Do you see emphasis on any one part more than other going forward?
Good afternoon, Vinay, and thanks for inviting me on this platform. You have been very generous in saying not so many nice words about it. So thanks a lot. I think it is not only the group, but as a group, Tata has its own image, which brings a lot of responsibility on each one of us who are working in the group, per se.
Sure.
Regarding your question about our strategy for future, I think it was not that we are in this without any purpose or without any thought processes. I can share with you that 5 years back or 6 years back, we were into other 2 businesses too, which we shut down. And believe me, in my career, in my professional career, I have realized that shutting down businesses is much more difficult than starting new businesses. You have a lot of positivity when you're starting new businesses. Shutting down, there is a lot of emotions. If others can do well, why can't you? That question keeps on coming up. So we shut down 2 businesses, 2 business lines as such, and then thought about only concentrating on the EPC as well as our manufacturing, and of course we have our own investments. Today, as we speak, like you rightly said, that we have this distinction of being India's number one in many, but I think we will be even in our investments, where on our own operating assets, while we are at 3.5 gigawatt in the current state and going to be approximately 5 by the end of this financial years. Our target is to between 15 to 20 gigawatt by 2027. That's the next 5-year target. So is in these fields too. So I think our strategy on each of this business, if you ask me, is to have multiple growth and multiple X growth. Uh, if you see in the EPC utility scale, where we have now the distinction of being number one, there is a huge growth potential as we see. More and more players are coming, and it helps us to not only doing good for others, but also then doing good for others. It's a win-win for both. Whatever we learn from others, we inculcate into our own projects. Whatever learnings we have our own projects, we also pass it on to the other developers. So we actually are improving in this whole process, which helps the clients as well as us. And the testimony of, I think, the respect as well as the cost optimization which we have achieved so far is that we have the distinction of being awarded till date largest ever EPC single contract, which is more than the single contract is more than most of, in fact, all the other EPC companies in the utility scale, that single order itself. So I think India is growing. India is growing manifold on this. The Honorable Prime Minister has now set a target and announced a 500 gigawatt by the end of this decade, which, if I just do a simple arithmetic, means that 25 to 35 gigawatts of additional projects being commissioned and generating power uh, through renewable on a per annum basis. Rooftop too, we have the distinction, and I think in the next 5 years, our intention is to grow at least 9x on that part. We also are into pumps business. Again, we are looking for a very different segment. In the pump business too, the growth is now phenomenal. What we used to do in 1 year, we have been achieving in a quarter. We have come to a level that what we used to do in 1 year, we are achieving in a month. And I think very soon in the next 5 years, on a per annum basis, our target is to do at least 2 lakhs pump per annum, which, if you look at, is more than what the total country has its installed capacity. I think we are well placed on it, and now we are at that inflection point where, with this growth, we have to grow along with it. The growth is going to be exponential in renewable. It has its own challenges, and we have our own learnings of the past too. I don't think so that it's an easy path and a track for any one of us who are here. It's a highly competitive world. We depend so much on the external commodities that we need to be very savvy and prudent in what we are doing. And of course, the quality of the product has to be impeccable. So I think strategically, we are well poised to have multiple X growth, which we have declared to. But having said that, I think all of it comes with a lot of learnings, which we as a part of our process in the organization itself try to incorporate so that we improve for future.
Sure, Ashish, thanks. Now, this is obviously a very capital intensive business, and congratulations on closing the marquee transaction with BlackRock. And I'm glad that we had a small role to play in this. But obviously, you have much bigger plans going beyond. So, what are the fundraising plans? I mean, you obviously have a pipeline of almost 3 gigawatts on development side, besides many other plans. There have obviously been talks in the past about IPO and other fundraising plans. So can you give us a little bit of color on that?
See, if you look at our business, say all the segments which we have, if I take one by one of this, then on the EPC front, you don't require that much of an equity. It's more a game of a working capital. And if you play well, cash you hand, and if you can execute your projects on a much shorter time frame, you don't require that much of equity. So for our growth plan of, say, by FY27, if we are even doing 30,000 crores of EPC business, then we are well poised for it. Doesn't require that much of equity per se. The equity is required primarily on our own investments. BlackRock and Mubadala has come. It is already public. We have announced to the stock exchange too, in the range of 10 to 11% of the equity, which the deal is going to close. It has already been announced, so I think it's a public information. I don't think so that an organization like Tata Power has any dearth from the equity standpoint. I think it is the prudence on where we are investing and are we getting the predictable returns. I think that is more critical for our growth, because we have seen that there are many players in the past 5 years itself, who has come with a bang and has just left this country without much of a noise as such. So I think it is important factor that wherever we spend our money, wherever our equity is there, we get our predictable returns. And for that, we have to build our project on that predictable cost. And the quality of the project should be such that we should be able to get the MUs, as we famously say, from them and the revenues. It is also important that our receivables are in line with what we are assuming, because very frankly, when it is so easy on an Excel sheet and a PowerPoint uh, to take a decision. I think the difficult part is to execute it uh, to the last decimal place as per those Excel sheet and PowerPoints, and try to get more and extract more from that investment. So we don't have much of a challenge, if you ask me, on our growth trajectory. I think even if this 15 gig or 20 gigawatt which we are talking about, we can have more of it too. I think the challenge more and more is, are we getting enough opportunities where we can get the predictable returns? We are not
Correct.
there for the heck of it, winning and then losing the opportunities to get that money back.
Sure, sure. Thanks, Ashish. So, you talked about very pertinently about, making sure that the cost numbers are adhered to and the returns are optimal based on the business profile. Now, last 2 years have obviously, been a bit of a rocky patch in the sense that, costs have gone up. There's been all kinds of disruption on equipment supply, shipping, execution, etc. Uh, Taxes have gone up, duties have come in, and so on and so forth. Now, on the other side, because has been such kind of scarcity of auctions, auctions have really slowed down over the last 2 years. The competition is obviously very, very intense. And very remarkably, we've seen tariffs move up by barely about 20 to 30 paisa. If I look at what happened 2 years ago, when we said 199 is a crazy tariff. And even then, tariffs have moved up by 20, 30 paisa when so many things have happened. I mean, if you look at module and POS, the costs have gone up by 50% almost. Is there a correction due in your view? In terms of tariffs, what are these projects which have been bid out below sub 250 tariffs? Are they really viable, and what is the outlook for the sector in terms of auctions and tariffs?
And well said that we have very unprecedented last 2 years. And if you ask me, I think whatever we could have learned in 5 to 10 years, we have learned in the last 2 years. So it's
Right.
good industry. You have early learnings.
Yeah.
India has started its journey of renewables pretty late compared to the Europeans or Chinese or many other
Yeah.
countries. And I think it is better that we have our own set of learnings, which are important, because if you look at it, we are not going to end up with another 5, 10, or 30 or 50 gigawatt in this country. We have a potential of 1,000 gigawatt of just solar and wind. And this is the future. Whether we are supplying power to the futuristic hydrogen, or we are
Yeah.
supplying power to the last village in this country through renewables, through distributed generations too. I think there is a huge potential, and we are so well placed and blessed in this country to have so much of renewable potentials, whether it is wind or solar. So I think
Yeah.
I would like to look at a 2 year window to actually comment on the health of the industry. But having said that, you are so right that things have gone different than what they were. The commodity
Yeah.
prices in the past were always going southward, and most of the developers have taken advantage from what they have assumed, and when they have built, the returns were different, much better, if I would say so. In the last 2 years, things have changed, whether it is the shipping cost, or it is in solar the module cost, or the steel cost. There have been very dramatic, in some sense, increases in the prices of these commodities, which has impacted us. Now, what happens is that when you are bidding on projects and you are on a razor thin margin and your assumptions are very aggressive, and then if these environmental impacts affects you, it has a very different connotation than compared to those who are playing safe and they have some float or fat in their returns expectation. And I
Sure.
think that's what is a big lesson for all of us, that when we are bidding for a project, rather than having overtly aggressive assumptions that everything will remain standstill and I will get my returns, compared to that, let's look around that things can go wrong, and some of them will go wrong. Some of them may go wrong for your betterment too, from your expectations. It is quite possible.
Sure.
Some will
Sure.
go wrong for other reasons too. I think it's a big lesson. I do agree with you that the current tariff, if you touch the effect of each and every element which has increased, and then add it on to the earlier bids, then the difference should not be like that. But I think there is also a sense in, or a desperation in many players, because bids have not come. They have their own, I would say, objectives to win a certain number of megawatts and projects. And especially the public sector companies have come now in a big foray. 3 to 4 years back, we don't have them. Now, if you look their
Right.
cost, debt, and their expectation of return may be very different than a private player. I'm not saying who's high and who's low, but might be very different from a private player. So I think with this, the competition is hotting up, and we have seen recent bids which were aggressive, but even we have won certain bids, and I think even there also we are getting our predictable return. So I would say that we should not consider those bids which are very low as a window of that someone is doing a very dramatically wrong. On an overall basis, if an organization is building 2 4 gigawatt or 1+ gigawatt, then it is quite possible that some of that will give certain less return and some more. One thing which I feel definitely has been done in this process is people have assumed that things will go down, whether it is the cost of steel, copper, cement, labor, may not be labor, and of course the panel part. Now, it should go down because we have seen the maximum out of it. But how much it will lower, uh, that's the basis of individuals' assumptions. We would see how it works out. But I don't foresee that a project will not come. I
Yeah.
think projects will come. The challenge is not the tariff for most of the developer, if you ask me, Vinay. The challenge is the time it takes from the time you bid to the time you get a PPA. There, in between that uncertainty, assumptions may change, and you have no control. You can't build a project, you can't start building a project, because you will appreciate a fact that since we are so much dependent on external commodities for any of these projects, each of the developer, or for that matter EPC contractor, would like to de-risk as much as possible by procuring it as early as possible in that manner, and also execute the project in the shortest span of time. Now, this interim period from winning a bid to a PPA sign off, if that extends, then that changes the calculations of each developer,
Sure.
and that doesn't help them because it is not in their control. I think that is something which is beyond their control. Everything else is a business decision. Sometimes people take decision of going for low margin. You can't stop them.
Sure, sure, sure. So let me ask you a slightly controversial question. Maybe it's not controversial. A lot of people believe that the bidding framework, the way it is designed, basically the odds are against the developers. There is so much competitive tension. There is no visibility. on the tender pipeline. Everybody's on the edge to kind of win more and build a pipeline, so the tariffs go down low. I know that some developers have been constantly pushing the government to change the paradigm, so to say. Do you think that the auctions framework needs to be revisited? Obviously, we need to grow from 10 gigawatt to 40 gigawatt per annum to accelerate things, to attract capital, to reduce the risk. Do you think things need to change, or what we have currently is sufficient?
I think I think the process of selection is just a process.
Yeah.
It all depends on, in my view, how serious or maturely we are working on it. The challenge is not the process itself. While I do agree with you that when you are in a reverse auction, and ask me, it increases your blood pressures and there's lots of tension which grows on. But I would say that it is because I am at fault. I can't blame what is happening in my body to someone else. They are not
Yeah.
instilling that sort of tension in me. I am tense because I intend to be highly competitive on that. While I do agree that this is the only infrastructure segment where we have reverse auction, I have seen across in roads, pipelines, and other places, this sort of mechanism for a selection of bidder is not there, and it has its merits and its demerits. So I'm more concerned on the other factors which is not developing. First of all, I think the competition is also brewing up because there is not enough demand coming up outside. You know, if I know that there is 10 gigawatt or 12 gigawatts, these are the time frames which are honored, uh, and I will get a PPA by this particular time, I will act more maturely. When you have a very little food, then you always have people who are fighting over it. So I think
Yeah.
if we have those projections which can come out, there are projections which has come out, but it comes true out there. Our recent experience of the has not been great from, you know, because last year there were not many bids and not many projects have come. I think we need to
Yeah.
change that experience by having more bids, conversion of those bids into PPAs, and then more and more projects being commissioned. Last year, as a country, if you see on a solar side and even on a wind side, we
Correct.
have only very few gigawatt to be proud of that being commissioned. We have done few.
Yeah.
Let's say as an industry, I feel when we are looking at a 500 gigawatt and we are at 2022, we should be talking of a very different scale. Currently,
Yeah.
when you have 1 gigawatt bid, 500 megawatt bid, everyone is hungry and trying to capture whatever is possible. And that is also reflecting on the reverse auction. The other trend which has also emerged in the last, I think, 2 years has been this negotiations with the selected bidders. You know, asking justifications for the tariff and trying to negotiate it too, even with the L1 bidders. I think that is also not helping the industry.
Yeah.
That so there are few bids, but that is not creating the right environment and the perception in
Yeah.
the minds of investors too. So I think these uncertainties, if we can weed it out, and then come to a level where whether the single bid compared to reverse auction, then we can reach that level of maturity on discussion on that. Today we have so many other important factors which we need to actually take care of before we reach a level where we say whether reverse auction is better than this thing. I think we have a lot more to do.
Yeah. Sure. So let's look on the bright side. I mean, a lot of things have gone wrong. Industry has learned a lot, but arguably, I would say the commodity cycle kind of peaked. I mean, nobody knows, but one would hope so. And there is a lot of expectation that module prices, because of various demand supply constraint factors, should start easing off, and hopefully easing off by a big margin from end of this year or early next year. So do you see, prospects brightening on the cost front sometime over the next 1 to 2 years?
No, I think you see at the end of the day, our businesses are dependent on the cost and then its returns expectation. So if the cost goes up, if I am playing the right way, then my return expectations are also accordingly. So I don't,
Yeah.
you know, if you ask me while I do foresee and read a lot of news and projections of cost of panels coming up. But panel import itself is not that easy right now with the ALMM coming in and the duties which are coming in. I think more and more now it's dependent on the wafers and the cell. For that matter, steel prices we have already seen softening up, but I think there is also an element of glass which is creating problem, EVA which is going high because of the crude. So there are very small elements to besides copper and steel, which is also playing an important role in the whole process. But I will take your first cue on it. I think every time we talk, and at least when we talk, we only speak about things which we can improve, which is the right way to do. We should look for things which we have improved. But I would also say that if I look at this industry 5 years back and now today, the way at least even when Tata Power from this standpoint used to operate or execute, there is a phenomenal change, improvement in us. What used to be, 100 megawatt project taking 18 months, now we are committing 1 gigawatt and looking forward for execution of it in 18 months, even with our own land. You know, the scale has changed, and so is the improvement in each and every organization. If you look at the technology changes today, which has happened in the last 5 years, especially in India, I am still discounting the technology change of only selection of products which are better. Like earlier, we used to have 250 or 240 or 235 watt peak module, and today we are talking about 540. Even if I take away that part of it, look at the inverter size, the block size which has changed. Look at the land requirement which has reduced from what we used to execute earlier and what we are executing now. Look at the operations cost, which has reduced dramatically low while the performance of the plants have improved. Look at even the water requirement with the robotics coming up. Look at the technology which we in this industry, not only Tata Power, but many others too, are now actually deploying the new technologies which have drones based on it, which have e-security on it. Today we are experimenting on running a project with absolutely no manpower and can operate it offline. Now, what it helps us is that today, if I can do it from Mumbai to one of my project in Karnataka, then tomorrow I can also operate a plant from Mumbai, a plant in Copenhagen. And that is what we should be looking at. We are advancing at a level which the Westerners or the Chinese have not yet reached. I think we have our own strengths on services. We have our own strengths on technology improvements. May not be on the product side, but on a services side. And I think there is a phenomenal change which has happened in this industry in the last few years, not only on solar, but also on the wind part. Look at the WTG size. Look at the cost effectiveness in which we are operating and the PLF in which we are generating from the same machines or even improved machines. So I think this industry in the last 5 to 7 or 10 years has improved dramatically compared to many others infrastructure industry, and there is still a lot of plus in it. I would say another thing which we should not forget is that most of our projects in renewable are in hinterland where otherwise there was not much of the projects or the commercial or industrial activities. And in the same process, now we are developing those resources which are local. There are local contractors which are coming forward. There are local individuals whom we are training and they are operating their plants. So the migration to the cities may not be helping, and those individuals are getting much better job within their own hometowns, which was not possible in the past. So with this growth, renewable is bringing and the technology improvement and investments coming on resources, which is giving a good returns to each one of us. I think we should not forget this fact that it's a big plus which is happening because of renewable. I'm taking away the fact of a climate change out of it. I'm not at all talking about the big things. I'm saying the small things which are happening, incremental and helping the society, helping the industry, and the improvements in the technology has been phenomenal. I think somehow when we are speaking about renewable, we miss these elements which are also playing a very critical role in enhanced deployment of these renewable resources in this country, and its acceptance for that matter.
Yeah, I think that's very impressive, Ashish. You also talked about lull in auctions over the last 1 or 2 years. Now, currently, of course, we are going through a phase where power demand is kind of absolutely surprised us on the positive side. If you look at the press, there's all kinds of articles on power outages, coal imports, tariffs going up, costs going up, etc. We haven't quite though seen a big pickup in renewables demand, and there can be all kinds of dynamics around that. What needs to happen for renewables to capture this opportunity? There's been a lot of talk about RTC tenders, peak power tenders, etc., alternative hybrid configurations. But is it because of cost? Is it an awareness issue? What needs to happen for renewables to become the main source going forward, the dispatchable, dependable source, and overcome and get one up over fossil fuels?
First of all, let me say that renewable should not be one up over fossil fuel. I think they both have to coexist for this country.
Sure.
Our per capita demand of energy is virtually one third, or a power demand is one third of the world average. We are
Correct.
1/6 of China, 1/12 of US. So once we have a GDP increase, I think the power demand will increase. There is no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
More and more power will also help us to improve industrialization and the well-being of the society and the citizen of this country. I think somehow renewable is missing this game where they can play a very critical role. In our roti kapda of makan ki ladai mein, we are missing the larger role which this industry can play. And now today, when if you look at it, what are the alternate sources of power which we can have? We can fossil fuel, which is a big no. Tata Power themselves have announced that they will not add much. There is very huge challenges on the climate change and the carbon impacts on it. So I think fossil fuel is a big no. Nuclear takes a lot of time to come up, if at all, to that path, and there are also plus and minus on this. I think a great source which India can exploit today, and all of us has to play a very important role in it, is renewables. Why so? That we can also get it at a very short period of time.
Yes.
We can have a 1 gigawatt, 5 gigawatt, 10 gigawatts projects with 10 developers, maybe in less than a year and a half, if the land is available, or we can do it across. So what are we looking at is we can deploy huge amount of renewables, even though the PLF is low. But let's even talk about the PLF too. Do I really need storage for a 24/7? Internally, we have done studies on certain cities. If you look at the power demand of any city or energy demand of any city in this country, then virtually we are at a scenario where is the peak load? Peak load is early morning, and then we have an evening, and then during the day. We don't have a load required at night. Unlike the West, where they need a heat load, and they have a huge amount of heat load at night. Now, wind profile, if you look at it, from most of the places are very good in early morning and late evenings, and we have very nice solar profile during the day. It helps us. By default, this PLF of 40-45%, even if I put a hybrid on, today most of the solar projects have a COF of 28% plus. We are looking for a 30-35% plus of a COF from a wind projects. If in the current technology frame, I think there is even if I take away the storage for the time being, I will come to it in few seconds. Even if I take it away, then I still have a huge amount of power which can be generated from these two as a hybrid from these two itself. And I've also seen that today most of the tenders which are coming from SECI or from others too are of hybrid in nature. So I think that is the right step. The only thing we have to improve it on. On a storage, what is not helping us is the lithium prices have again gone up phenomenally. We don't have it with. We don't have lithium with us. We don't have a battery storage capacities in us. We can build pump storage, which is good for us. We can build some hydro project for us. But I think I keep on saying that a perfection should not be a killer of a goodness. we can have enough renewable in the process, can add further storage to make it 24/7. We have done enough studies that with a very small fossil fuel or a hydropower, 80% of a city demands, and these studies are for Delhi, Mumbai, Varanasi. I'm talking about metro city. I'm not talking about a village out there. We can
Yeah.
manage, simply manage it with a very small infusion of a fossil fuel or a storage, and can do a lot more with just simple solar and wind with slightly over capacity, which can again go to the grid on that matter. But the challenge again comes out is that we also have to look at the grid level. Today, each one of us are only looking at infusion of power in the grid. And since the power infusion is at a much lower scale, the grids are still stable. I think we might require storage capacities for the grid too, for them to be stabilized. That infrastructure which PGCIL and CTUs are looking at, I think all of us has to move forward to have a final solution. We just cannot have someone in this race of 4 into 100 meters, someone winning and all the others are lagging behind. That's my view.
Sure, sure. Thanks, Ashish. So, let me just stay back and talk about the discom financial issue. That's obviously always been an evergreen topic, and it always, against all odds, it just continues to get worse and worse. And I was just kind of counting today. I think in the last 15 years, there have been six different restructuring attempts, financial support mechanisms, etc. Are you reconciled to living with this problem? Is that becoming a bottleneck to the growth of the sector? Or as a developer, you take the view that SECI is off taking, it doesn't matter to me. How do you think of that? And what is the potential solution out there? Because nothing has worked so far.
Okay, let me first uh, talk about what the developer and us are thinking about on this matter. So in future, currently wherever we are bidding, we do take into consideration the off-takers' health and credibility. Now, what happens this is that in times to come, and even now, you would realize that certain off-takers will always get a higher tariff because people are not, if they are not confident of when they will get their money back out, you will realize that that working capital is built into their tariff. So it is not good for the off-takers to have not a healthy balance sheet on their own or a reputation and a credibility to pay on time. I think that is one impact. That is one thing which will impact them in times to come too, and is also impacting them. And that is one of the reasons that you will realize in SECI tenders, since they have some guarantee as an offtake, you always have a much better tariff than other off. Even though they charge their own commission or 7 paisa with the distribution companies. So I think the distribution companies themselves have to look into this, that there can be savings if their health is better. What can be done about it? I think there is a lot of which is going on, but being a concurrent subject, we have to evolve a solution. I don't think so a solution thrust upon anyone else. And it is I think also the responsibility of the state to look at how do they reduce their T&D losses, and how do they also manage the selling price of their power if their cost price is higher than that. I think there is no one solution to it. And being a concurrent subject, I think everyone has to evolve in this. What can work for X may not work for Y, and the elements are also different. But important factor is that for any business, I'm not differentiating between fossil fuel and renewable on this. The credibility of the other side, the other partner, is very important. Even if you say you will pay us in 180 days, then please pay us in 180 days. We will build in the cost in it. But that you will pay us in 60 days, and then even for 360 days, if the monies are not coming, then you have a credibility which is lost. The other important factor, which I think it is not every distribution company which is doing it. They are wonderfully good distribution companies too. We have many PPAs where the money comes on time. Most of them even pay us early and take advantage of early payments too, which is the discount available in the PPAs. It is those few cases which is being, I would say, get more optics, and even the investor coming from outside then make a larger picture on that particular aspect. I think it is not good for the country too. When we are looking for investments, when we are looking for investments coming from outside of the country too, and then we have these examples which gets a larger optics, it is not good for the country too. So I think it is incumbent on the state as well as the center to find a sustainable solution to it. Otherwise, this 500 gigawatt, again, we would say that there will be a question mark, even though we have an immense opportunity and a need for it. Why there should be a question mark? Only because of these few fundamental issues. I think we need to work on fundamentals, but get a solution which is win-win for all.
Understood, Ashish. Thanks. So the government is now very, very focused and intent on the Make in India campaign, and I would say so much so that if in the last 8 to 10 years the focus was all on project development, adding more capacity, bringing tariffs down, now it is more and more about making things in India and becoming self-sufficient. Obviously, there have been a number of initiatives announced. What are your manufacturing plans? Are you waiting for the PLI-2 scheme? What is your expected capacity ramp up over the next 2 to 5 years?
So, Vinay, as you know, we are the oldest manufacturer of cell and module
Indeed,
industry.
indeed.
Yeah, we are in manufacturing from last 30 years, and if we were limited to 1.1 gigawatt of cell and module put together for such a long time, it was because of even though our products used to get a premium outside the country, it was difficult to consume them within the country. Now with this tariff barriers coming in and the incentives which are being clearly articulated by the government, we are going ahead. We have already announced a 4 gigawatt cell and a 4 gigawatt module greenfield, which we are commencing on. It is as per the plan. It should be coming in the next calendar year, or for sure a financial year, next financial year, if not in the calendar year. We are all ahead on it. We will not shy away for a further expansions too, if we realize that the demand side is solid. You will appreciate the fact when there that unlike a developer or a EPC project, which are more on a transactional basis, manufacturing, you have to keep on investing. You need to look into the demand side very closely and not for a year or a two. You have to look it for a very long term. And the other aspect of manufacturing of particularly in the renewables compared to many others is that technology keeps on changing. So after every 2 to 3 years, you should be ready to reinvest in a newer technology. So it's not one-time decision. So everyone takes it carefully. We have also been currently going ahead with the 4 gigawatt ones, with the full intention that if it demands, we will increase it.
And do you think, I think today, obviously, the ecosystem is not there. But let's say over the next 2 to 3 years, the ancillary facilities are set up, the R&D, the technology, expertise is kind of there in the ecosystem. Do you think India-made modules will be cost competitive with imported modules? Will there be a delta or a cost disadvantage, setting aside duties and taxes?
I think the challenge is the scale, Vinay. The scale with which the China produces or their expansion plan, compared to us, will always remain a challenge.
Right.
We can sell our products based on the quality of, if we make it a better quality.
Right.
But that challenge will remain. The second point is that even in the current scheme of things, as I see whatever has been announced by the other manufacturers or those who are coming into manufacturing, there is no specific announcement on a standalone poly or wafers. So the dependence on those who are into cell and module for imported wafers, for that matter, will remain. And
Right.
so you will not be, and if you are still dependent on the wafers and it's only adding your values on cell and module, it will not be possible for you to be competitive on that value addition.
But Ashish, the whole PLI 2 scheme is now basically much more weighted towards backward integration. So more capacity on the polysilicon and wafer side. So hopefully that will be resolved over the next 2 to 3 years, right?
Yes, Vinay, but if you look at it, it is fully integrated. So
Yeah.
all, if anyone is setting up from poly to module, it is all for themselves.
Okay.
So the players
Okay.
who are, if you look at China too, and I'm just taking it as an example, there are wafers manufacturers, there are poly manufacturers, there are cell and module manufacturers. Some are integrated too. Now
Yeah.
today, since all the announcements which I have come across or the intent which I have seen are for those which are fully integrated. So where will the cell guy will get their wafers from? Or a wafer guy will get their poly from? Because
Hmm.
all the capacities which these players or any player, including us, will be producing will be for a captive use.
Hmm.
So on the downstream, the dependence on imports will still exist. That's
Hmm.
where I'm coming from. So it will take
Understood.
us time, but yes, it is the right move in the right direction. And I think products will always command a premium, even for export. So if you ask me, I'm not only looking at India per se as an industry, though Tata Power is focused in India fully on this.
Sure.
But if we can make products which are even slightly less competitive than Chinese, then at least our experience has been that we used to command a premium in exports from the same buyers.
Yeah.
So there are opportunities. There is a respect of Indian manufactured products outside the country and within the country too. But like I said, we have to play very maturely out here. We should not be cutting corners at the initial stage to recover some of our losses of the past. That will not be good for the country on the long term.
Understood, Ashish. Uh, with the power prices now improving, demand shooting up, we have again seen people talk about merchant power plants. That is something the last we used to hear about 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And that did not go very well. Do you think, is it a fad, passing fad, or do you think with the market evolving, the scale growing, there is an opportunity out there for merchant power plants, particularly as the costs are not going to just keep coming down and down, as we have seen. Maybe the cost curve has stabilized, and hence people can put up merchant power plants. I mean, and are you interested in exploring that option?
Yeah, Vinay. I think first of all, let me take the last question first this time. We are very keen on this. We have a strategy. We already have a decent portfolio on group captive and otherwise, and I think even the
Yeah.
merchant we are looking very. So we have a big plans, and personally, we feel as an organization also, we feel it's a great opportunity for a company like us, which has all the ingredients. And where the opportunity is coming is primarily the sensitivity of many companies and industries towards the climate change. So while in the past it was just the cost effectiveness of renewables, which was cheaper than what has been provided from the discoms.
Correct.
I think of late in the last 1 or 2 years, this climate change and then the announcement of major organizations that they will be net carbon zero is also helping this particular market to grow manifold. If you look at the announcements of Amazon, Google's, and even the smaller ones too, I think this all of it is bringing a great opportunity and a business which is available in front or of all of us. As a Tata Power, we have a strategy to harness and take the maximum advantage of this opportunity which is coming. And I think it will be very sustainable on a long-term basis. From a cost as well as the climate change sensitivity perspective, the ESG has become a good thing, which is also helping us and is a good tailwind for all of us in this industry. I would say that what you have asked is available in front of all of us, and it's going to go a long way.
See, do we have time for one last question?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. There is, a lot of anticipation around hydrogen. And obviously, hydrogen means lots and lots of renewable capacity addition. I mean, the government's target is 5 million tons, and that alone is about 125 gigawatts of renewable capacity in the next 8 years. Uh, just separate the hype and the reality for us. Obviously, the technology is still evolving. The cost curve needs to develop a long way. The manufacturing capacity for electrolyzers needs to be set up. So, how much of it is real, and to what extent are you uh, keen on it and looking to basically make a play in the hydrogen space?
So as we are, our strengths today are more on providing the energy at the most cost-effective rate. And I think that is where we are playing on this field as of now. We have tie-ups and JVs with certain organizations who will take it further from there. We don't, as we speak, we don't have strengths on the electrolyzer part, and then selling the hydrogen further on for further usage. So we are concentrating on providing the least cost renewable energy, which plays a very important role in this whole aspect. Regarding
Yeah.
hydrogen per se, I believe that I would be highly surprised that we see a huge deployment of vehicles running on passenger vehicles running on hydrogen cylinders very soon. I think it will
Yeah.
first go to industry level, the steel and petrochemicals, which will be utilizing it, and then it is going to come forward. It's an evolving industry, but I think most critical part of why it has become uh, such a new kid in the market and everyone is looking at it is primarily because of the cost of energy, which is so low now for it, and that is being provided by renewables. I think the half the job is done. The other job of having those electrolyzers which can produce hydrogen and then transportation of hydrogen, that is something which will, that technology, once it is evolved, I think it will be a great game changer. But I think in the coming few years and in this decade, we will see more and more technology developments rather than deployments.
Great, Ashish. Thank you so much for all your insights. I learned a lot, and I hope our people in this session found it useful too. So thank you very much again, and wish you all the best. I will, with that, I'll pass over to Sangeeta to close the session. Sangeeta, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Vinay. Thank you, Mr. Khanna. As Mr. Vinay already said, that was a very enriching discussion, and I'm sure we, as well as our audience, really benefited from this. Thank you once again. Thank you, audience, for joining us today. We have a recording of today's session, and we will send it to you on your email address, and it will also be hosted on our website as well as our YouTube channels. That is all from us at Bridge to India today. So until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thank you, Vinay. It has been a great opportunity. It's always a pleasure speaking to you, Vinay. I think I learn more in the process than you would have in this. But great initiative. Wish you luck, and thanks once again for giving this opportunity to have a great.
That's very kind, Ashish. That's very kind. Pleasure and the privilege is all ours. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you.